Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a profoundly transformative era in modern history, the Gandhian phase of the Indian national movement. Spanning from roughly 1919 all the way to 1947, we're going to unpack exactly how Mahatma Gandhi introduced a new set of principles that took a highly fragmented struggle and turned it into an absolutely unstoppable 30-year mass movement. It's a fascinating journey, so let's jump right in.
Okay, let's quickly check out our roadmap for today. We'll be hitting 1. The weapons of nonviolence. 2. Early local victories. 3. The nationwide awakening. 4. Marching to defiance. And finally, 5. Do or die.
Starting off with Section 1, the weapons of nonviolence, redefining resistance.
So you know these terms, right? Satyagraha and ahimsa. They form the absolute bedrock of the Gandhian era. But here's the thing to remember. These weren't just lofty philosophical concepts. Gandhi introduced them as major, practical weapons against British rule. Ahimsa, meaning nonviolence, and satyagraha, meaning holding firmly to truth, were deployed incredibly tactically. They were literally designed to actively challenge authority and disrupt the entire system, entirely without striking a single physical blow.
Let's move right along to Section 2, early local victories, testing the waters.
Now, before taking on the entire British Empire, Gandhi kind of had to test his methods on a smaller, localized scale first. Between 1917 and 1918, he initiated a rapid succession of interventions. It all kicked off with his first major satyagraha at Champaran, Bihar, in 1917. Then, the very next year, in 1918, he led the Kheda Satyagraha in Gujarat, which was followed almost immediately by the Ahmedabad Mills strike.
What's absolutely crucial here is seeing the direct cause and effect of these early actions. It was incredibly validating. Look at Champaran. Peasants who were being forced to cultivate indigo actually secured relief after Gandhi stepped in to support them. Over in Kheda, farmers facing crop failure successfully pushed the government to completely suspend tax collections. And in Ahmedabad, Gandhi's decision to fast helped textile workers secure a much-needed wage increase. We're talking real, tangible results here, all achieved using nonviolent methods.
So these early wins were undeniably powerful for sure, but it leads us to a really compelling question. How did these highly localized protests over things like indigo, taxes, and wages suddenly transform into a sweeping national revolution?
That brings us to Section 3, the nationwide awakening. The scale increases.
Well, ironically, the shift to a massive national scale was actually sparked by the British government's own heavy-handed legislation. The Rowlatt Act of 1919 gave the British these extensive, sweeping powers to arrest people without trial. I mean, just imagine that. Gandhi responded by launching the Rowlatt Satyagraha, and this was a massive escalation. You had an intensely oppressive law that was suddenly met with a highly coordinated, nationwide pushback.
But amidst all this growing tension, we hit a horrific turning point. On the 13th of April, 1919, the Jallianwala Bagh massacre took place. This was an utter tragedy, and it drastically intensified anti-British feelings across the entirety of India. It really fueled a profound, virtually unstoppable urgency within the movement.
Then, backed by the Indian National Congress, Gandhi launches the non-cooperation movement in 1920. We're talking massive, completely peaceful boycotts of government schools, courts, foreign goods, the whole 9 yards. But then, bam, a sudden violent trigger halts everything. In 1922, during the Chauri Chora incident, a group of protesters actually killed policemen. Because his core, non-negotiable principle of ahimsa was violated, Gandhi immediately, and to be honest, quite controversially at the time, withdrew the entire nationwide movement.
Moving forward, we reach Section 4, marching to defiance, civil disobedience. So, by the 1930s, the strategy evolves. We shift gears from mere non-cooperation into directly breaking unjust laws, and the milestones of this era systematically chip away at British authority. It starts with the civil disobedience movement in 1930, followed by a strategic diplomatic pause with the Gandhi-Irwin Pact in 1931. Then we jump ahead to the deeply aggressive Quit India movement in 1942, ultimately culminating in 1947.
I have to say, that 1930 campaign was an absolute masterclass in tactical escalation. It begins so simply, with Gandhi undertaking the historic Dandi March from his ashram straight to the sea. But that single, symbolic act officially launched the Salt Satyagraha, and the idea spread like wildfire. Defiance spread across all of India, with millions of everyday citizens actively and, most importantly, non-violently challenging British laws. And you know what? This widespread defiance literally forced the empire to the negotiating table. In 1931, the Gandhi-Irwin Pact was formed. Gandhi made a concession. He agreed to suspend civil disobedience and travel all the way to London for the Second Round Table Conference. But in return, having the British Viceroy formally sign an agreement with Gandhi, that was a massive, unprecedented acknowledgement of the movement's sheer political power.
And now, our final stretch. Section 5, Do or Die, the final push and aftermath.
By 1942, this struggle reached its absolute peak. The Congress, under Gandhi's leadership, launched the Quit India movement with an incredibly uncompromising central slogan, Do or Die. They were demanding nothing less than the immediate, complete withdrawal of the British. Now, even though the British heavily suppressed this uprising, the sheer scale of the resistance absolutely proved that Indian nationalism was now an unstoppable force. No going back.
So why was this surge of nationalism so incredibly strong? Because the Gandhian era totally flipped the script. It transformed a fight that was once waged mostly by elites into a true grassroots mass movement. This massive coalition united peasants, workers, women, students, and ordinary citizens. It's just a brilliant historical lesson in how unifying principles can turn everyday people into the architects of their own destiny.
Fast forward a bit. By the time the world emerged from the Second World War, the global geopolitical realities had shifted drastically. Sustaining British rule over India had become nearly impossible. You had immense internal pressure from decades of these mass movements, combined with a Britain that was financially and politically exhausted post-war. The empire's hold was finally collapsing.
Which brings us to the monumental year of 1947. And this is a moment of profound contrast. On one side, you have the ultimate triumph. On August 15, 1947, India finally achieves its independence, proving to the world that ahimsa and satyagraha could successfully topple an empire. But this triumph was met with deep tragedy, as the country was heavily and painfully partitioned into India and Pakistan. It's a very bittersweet reality.
As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a final, provocative thought. The Gandhian era showed the world how nonviolence could literally conquer an empire. But how does a nation, newly born from 30 years of peaceful struggle, navigate the incredibly complex, often violent realities of a partitioned land? That is a profound question to reflect on as you continue to explore this fascinating period in history. Thanks so much for learning with me today.